Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can set up login with TikTok on a web application. We are going to use React to build our front end, and for the back end, which is going to be a very simple back end, we use Node.js, Express, and TypeScript. I will show you how to use the latest TikTok login toolkit to set up your login with TikTok on a web application. And this is how the web application will look. So the user will have or navigate to this page, and we have this login with TikTok button. And when I click on it, it should take me to the login to TikTok page. So this is TikTok's own web application. And then I can select my login method. So I'll go with email and phone number. So I'll select email or username. So I will go ahead and log in by adding my email or username. So I have my email and my password, and I'm going to click on login. And this should redirect me once everything is successful. And let's see. And now it has redirected me to the authorized page. You can see my avatar, my TikTok username. Okay. And right here, I have this logout button. So if I log out, okay, first I'll check the URL. You can see it's localhost 3000/authorized. So I will log out, okay, from the page. And if I try to access authorized routes, it should redirect me back to the login page. Okay. And I can click on login with TikTok and it will log me back in. So I will show you how to implement this in this video. We are going to start by setting up our server because we'll need a server and a client. Since we are only working on web application, we are going to be using React. But before we get to the client part, let us set up the server part. The server is going to be a very simple Node.js Express server. So I will start up right here by creating a folder. So right here, I'll call this TikTok -login -server. Okay. So this is what I'm going to call the server. I'll open in the terminal. And since we are using Node.js, make sure you already have Node.js installed and npm. Okay. So I'll run npm init-y. And since I'm using TypeScript, I will need to set up TypeScript in the project. For us to set up TypeScript, you can check or install TypeScript globally on your machine. So npm install-g, then TypeScript right here. So this is going to install TypeScript. Now the next thing is inside the folder, I will run the command tsc space --init to initialize the project for TypeScript. And here you can see it has created the tsc config file. Let me just pause and remove all of these comments. And what I want in the config file is very simple. The target, module, lib, outputs, dist, root, source, and these other configurations. Just something very simple. Okay. Now the next thing is I'll go to package.json. Okay, so let us go ahead and install what we are going to need. Okay, so like I said, it's very simple. So npm install and then .env space cookie-parser space express. Okay, so go ahead and install this. And then for the dev dependencies, we need TypeScript. So npm install-d TypeScript inside the project, then tsx. Okay, and I can install nodemon. And let's go ahead and install the types so we don't have to worry about them again. /types cookie-parser at types /express and then at types /node. Okay, so we have all of these packages, so we have them now installed. Okay, like I said, this is going to be a very simple server. And now inside, I'll create the src folder. Okay, and then in the root, I can create a .env file, and if you want, you can create a .git ignore. Okay, and for now, I can just leave it empty, this one as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up our source. And one more thing I want to do, I'll just paste this editor config. Okay, so you can go ahead and add editor config. I just want it in my project. Okay, so the next thing is in the source, I will go ahead and add the index.ts file. So index.ts. Like I said, this server file is going to be very simple. We will just have the entry file, which is index.ts. We are going to have a controllers folder and a routes folder. Okay, so let's start with the index.ts file. Right here at the top, I'm going to import Express. Okay, so this server is going to be very simple. Application, requests, response, next function. Okay, from Express. Okay, and then imports .env from .env. The reason why I'm adding this is in case I need to push this to GitHub, I will not push any secrets or client keys. Okay, and then import cookie parser from cookie parser. Okay, this is going to be very simple. .env.config. So I'll add that so that it loads our file. And const app type application. Usually when I set up my server, I like using a class. But like I said, this is going to be simple. So there's no need setting up any class. Okay, so create an instance of Express. And we set the port. This will be process.env.ports, or I'll run this on port 4000. Okay, and now let's add middlewares. Very simple. So first, app.use. So in Express, this is how you register middlewares. So I'll say JSON, and let me have that imported from Express. Okay, and app.use URL encoded from Express as well, and now set extended to true. Okay, and app.use cookie parser. I'm just thinking we might not even need this cookie parser, but I will just set it. Okay, but because I think it's one of the requirements from TikTok. Okay, and let's add a 404 handler. So app is it 404 handler, app.use, and then requests of type requests. So this handler will catch routes that do not exist. Okay, response right here, and I can see res.status, and we return 404.json. Success true, and you can add a message if you want. Message, I'll use backticks, route notes found, request.method, and request.original URL. Okay, so this is the 404 handler, and we can add a global handler as well. Global handler, and let me just copy this. So instead of a request response, or at first I will add the error property, which is error. So we have error request response. And for this, instead of a for I'll add 500. And success, I'll set this to false. And message, you can add whatever message you want. Internal server error. Okay. And then if you want error, maybe error dot message. Okay, so this is for the global handler. Now let's add the listener. So start server. Okay, app.listen, and then I'll pass the ports and then a callback right here, and console.log. Maybe let me just paste this icon, and I'll say server is running on ports, and then whatever your port is. Okay, and then right here we can export default app. So a very simple Express server. We can take this next function out. We are not using it, so I'll take this one out. So as you can see, it's a very simple Express server. Now what we need to do is to start working on the controllers. So I'll go to source, create a folder called controllers, and then another folder called routes. Okay, so very simple. And for the controllers, I'll create a file called TikTok controller.ts. Also a very simple method. We're going to have two methods inside this controller file. Okay, and before we start, we need to set up our TikTok app, get our TikTok client key, and also the TikTok client secret. Okay, so I'll go to my browser right here. I'm using Safari. So I'll search for TikTok developers. Okay, so search for TikTok developers, whatever browser you're using, and go to developers.tiktok.com. Okay, so click on this right here. So this is where the platform we want to use to set up our TikTok login toolkit. Okay, so here tap into the TikTok content ecosystem, and there are some other features as well, but what we are interested in is just the toolkit. So first you need to sign up if you don't have an account, or if you have an account you can log in. So I'm going to sign up here. So go ahead and sign up. Okay, so I will sign up with my email, and then we'll come back. Okay, so I created a new account, and right here you can see I am logged in. Okay, so you just request for your email, and then once you verify your email, you will be requested to create a password, and that's it. Okay, so I believe you should be on this page. Once you are on this page, you can go to developer portal. Click on manage apps. Okay, so click on developer portal, click on manage apps. Okay, and right here you can see I don't have any app connected at the moment. Okay, so I'll click on connect app. You can say individual or organization. So individual, I'll confirm, and you can give it a name. Okay, so I'll just say TikTok app login. Okay, so give it whatever name, and then I'll click on this, and now it should take you to this page. Okay, now because we are testing, we are only going to be using the sandbox account. Now for the production account, you need to do some verifications before you can set up your production account. So I'll click on sandbox. Okay, so that is the one we are interested in. And let me click on create sandbox. Okay, so I'll give it the same name, TikTok login app. Confirm. Okay, so we are going to be working on the sandbox account. So you can see here it says sandbox. If I go to production, in order for you to submit for production, there are some things you need to create a video, submit a video of the app, and we are not doing all of that or any of that. So I'll go to sandbox. Okay, and we have the client key and client secrets. But before we can use that, we need to set some basic information. Now, one other thing you need to note with TikTok, okay? In order for you to set up or use your credentials and get access to the APIs, you need to set up all of this information. And TikTok, when it comes to URLs, TikTok expects URL served with HTTPS. Okay, so if you try to add any URL with HTTP, it's not going to accept that. Okay, so it's something very important that you need to note. But we are developing our application locally. Do we need to deploy the server in order for us to test it? No, we don't need to do that. What we need to do instead is we are going to use a tool. Okay, so I'll go to my browser, ngrok. So search for ngrok. Okay, so ngrok allows you to deliver your apps, your APIs on local and prod. So we are going to serve our local host running on port 4000 using ngrok, and then ngrok will provide us with a HTTPS link that we can use. Okay, so go ahead, create an account on ngrok. I already have an account, so I'm going to log in. And then once you log in, we're going to be using the CLI. Okay, so go ahead. I'll go ahead and log in right here. Okay, I am logged into ngrok. Like I said, I already had an account, so I just logged in. And you can go to the getting started, setup and installation. Since we are going to be using the CLI tool, we need to install the CLI tool. I already have set it up. On your own page, you should see your auth token. Okay, so whatever environment you are using, go ahead, install ngrok, add your token to your configuration. Okay, that's just all you need to do. So if you're using Windows or whatever operating system you're using, for me, I'm using a Mac OS. So all I need to do is run brew install ngrok, and then once it is installed, I'll copy my auth token and then run this command with the auth token, and that's it. Okay, so let me open the terminal and show you that I already have ngrok. Okay, so right here, and I can run ngrok. So you can see I already have it installed. Okay, so in order for us to use that, we would need to run it with our ports. So our ports for this, it's going to run on ports 4000, which is what we defined right here. Okay, so let me define this. Ports equal to 4000. So add it in to your .env, node_env equal to development. Okay, so we have this, and what I'm going to do is let's run our server. So I'll open my terminal, and before I get to that point, go to package.json. Go to package.json. Let's just quickly set up the script. Okay, so here I'll remove this and I'll add dev, and dev will be with nodemon --watch src --extension ts. Okay, and we want to execute it with, or execute the source/index.ts file. So whatever you are using, if you are using index.ts or main.ts or server, you specify it here. And now for the main, I'll change this main to dist dist/index.js. Remember in the config here, I said the output directory is /dist. Okay, so make sure you specify that here. And then for the dev, you specify or add this command. And for build, if you want to build, which we are likely not going to do, but I can just add this. We use tsc. Okay, and then if we want to add a start, if you decide to deploy, I'll say node dist/index.js. Okay, so go ahead and add this script commands. Now I'll open the terminal and run npm run dev. Okay, so it seems like there's an issue right here. I'll stop the server. And I think I missed something. In this dev command, after exec, I need to add the tsx command, tsx. Okay, so go ahead and add this command. So this is the correct one. Okay, so let me try it again and see. Okay, now you can see my server is running on port 4000. Okay, and now since this is running, if I try to add this to the dashboard, let me go back to TikTok. If I try to add http://localhost:4000, and then let me do the same thing here. And since we are only going to be working on the web platform, okay, so we are working only on the web platform. Here, you can add any logo that you want. I have a logo, so I just created this online, and then it generated this logo for me. Category, just select a category, whatever you want, and then I will give this networking app for friends. Okay, so just give this a description, terms of service, and now we are only implementing for our web platform. We're not implementing for desktop, Android, or iOS. So I'll select web. Okay, and now for the custom URL, let me copy this, paste it right here. Okay, and let me save. Okay, so you can see it did not throw any error, but when we try to use it, it's going to throw an error because this is not going to work. Okay, this is not going to work. So what we need to do instead, since our port is running on port 4000, okay, I will open my terminal. I already have ngrok, and I hope you have ngrok as well. So I will run the command ngrok http and then your port number. Mine is 4000. Hit enter. Okay, and then this is the URL that we need, this forwarding URL. So copy this part. You can see it right here with the ngrok-free.app. Okay, so copy this part. You can see it's served with HTTPS, and it forwards the traffic from the our local port or local host 4000. So copy this, and then I can go back. So let me change this here. Change this here. And for the web or desktop URL, okay, so I'll paste this here as well. Okay, so save. Now, one other thing that we need to do, we need to add the products that we need. Okay, so click on this add products. Now you can see the products that are available. Login kit to allow users to log into your app with TikTok, share kits to share to TikTok, but what we are interested in is this login kit. You can see the content posting API webhook. So select login kit, add, and then done. Okay, now since we are only implementing for web, we need a redirect URI. Okay, so this redirect URI is users will be redirected to this path after TikTok authorization from within your app. Okay, so we need to set up a redirect URI. Now, there's something that I need to point out because I had to experience this before I understood. in case you decided, okay, I want to implement for web, desktop, Android, iOS, okay, make sure that they will all have the same redirect URI, okay? So our redirect URI, I'll paste this. It's going to be something like, let me see. So you paste whatever your ngrok forwarding URL is, then slash, I'll say auth slash TikTok slash web slash callback. Okay, so now for this, if you decide to implement for desktop, Android, iOS, make sure that they all have this same callback URI. Because while I was testing out and I implemented for Android, iOS, I was able to implement it successfully on Android and also on iOS. And then when I implemented for web, I used a different URI. And it took me hours before I figured out, because the web worked, but Android and iOS stopped working because they had different redirect URIs. Okay, so you can use a generic one, maybe something like this. Now, it doesn't have to be this, okay? It can be anything. TikTok dash callback. It can be anything, or TikTok slash callback. Okay, whatever you want, you can just add. But for me, I decided to use auth slash TikTok slash web. Okay, slash callback. And if you add for Android, make sure that you use this same URI. If you add for iOS, you use the same as well. Okay, so this is what we want, and you can see the default scope is the user.info.basic. This just gives us access to the OpenID avatar display name. Okay, so if you check add scopes, you can see other scopes that we can add, but we don't need them. Okay, there are some scopes that if you request, you need to do some verification. But I think for our own case, this basic scope is sufficient. Okay, so now that I have added this, I will save. Okay, so I'll save this and let me copy this. Okay, so we are going to try it out later and see if it works. Now we need to copy our client key and client secret. Okay, so let me go right here. Go to your .env. Open your .env down here. I'll say TikTok underscore clients and TikTok underscore client underscore secret. Okay, so for me, this is just the sandbox because I will change this or I will delete this later. So it's not a problem. I can just show it, paste right here. And then for this, I will paste it right here as well. Okay, so go ahead, copy your client key and your client secret. You can add any icon, make sure that it matches these requirements. Okay, and now I have my TikTok client, TikTok secrets. Okay, we can now start adding our controller. So go to your controllers. Right here, I'll import requests and also response. Okay, and down here, I'll just create a web underscore app underscore URL. So this is just going to be your front-end URL. Now, because we are just working locally, okay, we are not going to deploy anything. I will just set this to localhost, HTTPS localhost. My localhost front-end will run on port 3000, okay? So we don't have the front-end yet, but I will just set this up, okay? And now let us define a redirect URL. So redirect underscore URL. And this is going to be equal to what we added here. So I can copy this. So go ahead and copy this. Okay, so copy it and then you paste it here. Okay, normally this your redirect URL, probably this part will be your backend server URL. Okay, so whatever you set it up to be once you deploy, it could be API dot backend server, whatever it is. But at this point, this is just the redirect URL. Now, the first thing I want to do is to create a method. So export const TikTok web authorization. It's going to be async with requests, response. It will return promise void. Okay, and I'll add a try catch. Okay, so what we want to do here is we want to construct the TikTok authorization URL and then call the redirect method. Okay, so the endpoint or for this particular controller will be called from our front-end application, our client application. And then we'll construct the TikTok authorize URL and then call the redirect. So let me just show you what I mean. What we need to do is we need to construct a state property, and I will do that using random bytes. So import random bytes from Node Crypto. Okay, you can create a function if you want to use that, but for simplicity's sake, I will use this Node Crypto. So const state, or before we get to that point, let me see if we can go to the docs. Okay, so let me go to docs. Okay, so you can click here, go to docs, and what we are interested in is this login kit. Okay, you can see we have login kit for web, desktop, iOS, Android, and we're interested in web. Now, if you go through this, you can see the prerequisites. Okay, it says a maximum of 10 URLs is supported. Okay, so you can add a maximum of 10 here. And URIs must be absolute and begin with HTTPS. Okay, you can see it. That's why we are using this ngrok URI. It must begin with HTTPS because it doesn't accept HTTP. Okay, so it must begin with HTTPS. And I don't want us to go through the process of trying to deploy our backend before we can test. Okay, so you can see this is incorrect. So URIs must be static, parameters must be denied. So it doesn't allow this query params. It doesn't allow it. It will throw an error. Okay, and it doesn't allow fragments or hash characters. So, and then once we integrate, let's see. Okay, in order for us to call the authorization URL, let me see down here if we have that particular URL. Yes, so this is what we need. Okay, this is the authorization URL that we need. So tiktok.com/v2/auth/authorize/ and then we add these params: client key, scope, response code, redirect URI, and state. And then we call the res.redirect. This is what we need to do. Okay, so let me show you that. I'll go back to my code. So for the state, you can see the state is just some random strings. Okay, so for us, we are using this random bytes. This is going to be equal to random bytes size 24 and then dot to string. And I want to convert it to hex string. Okay, so this will just generate some random strings for us. And let me see right here. You can see that this CSRF state is required, and we are setting it in the cookie. So we need to do that here as well. So I'll say res.cookie, And you can give it a name, whatever name you want. So I'll say TikTok underscore OAuth underscore state. And then the property is the state we want to save. And then some parameters. Okay, we can add some parameters if we want. So HTTP only, I'll set this to true. Secure, set this to true. Same site, I think use lax. And then you can add a max age if you want, 10 minutes or whatever. Then 10 multiplied by 60 multiplied by 1000. Okay, so you can use whatever property name you want, okay, for the cookie. But what is important is we are storing the random state property. And now the next thing is we need to construct the URL params. Okay, so instead of doing it this way, we can use the URL search params. So const params equal to new URL search params. Okay, and we pass an object. Now what do we want? We want the client key, the scope, response type, redirect URI, and state. Okay, so let's go ahead and add then right here. So this is going to be client underscore key. I'll say process.env dot client, or I think what did I call it? Yeah, TikTok clients. And then scope. The scope we are using is the default scope. The default scope is user info basic. This is the default scope. So if you're adding another scope to this, if you want, you can add another scope, and then all you just need to do is separate them using a comma. Okay, if you're adding another scope, but I don't need it. So I just want to show you, I think the default scope is sufficient. I'll remove this. Okay, and I need the response underscore type is a string, just say code, and then redirect underscore URI. This will be the redirect URI right here. And then we set our state. Okay, so this is what we have as the params. Now let's construct the URL. URL will be equal to backticks. Let me copy it from here, from the documentation. So just copy this part. Okay, paste it here, and I will add the params using the question mark symbols. This will be params dot to string, and I will do a console log URL, and then here URL. Okay, and what we just need to do here is return res dot redirect, and then we pass the URL. Okay, so also in the catch block, if there's an error, return res dot redirect, and I can add the part. Now, whenever there's an error, we want it to redirect back to our client. So that is why I added this web app URL. And then whatever parts you want to add, if it's login slash sign up, I'll just add, instead of this, I'll just add the params TikTok underscore error. You can add whatever message. I'll just say unknown. Okay, so I will show you later how we can use this, okay, on the client side. This is just all we need to do here, which is this first method. Okay, so we are going to call this, and then it will construct this URL with the required params, and then it will redirect the user to the TikTok authentication page. Okay, so once we send this information and TikTok checks and finds out that, okay, they are the required information, then it will redirect the user to the TikTok login page. Then the user will have to input their TikTok information to log in, and then the user will be redirected back to their web app URL page. Now I will quickly go ahead and add the route. So this will be TikTok routes.ts. So for this, I'll import router from Express, okay, and const router equal to router, and router, this is going to be a get request, router.get, and now we need to add the paths. Recall that we set the paths here to /auth/ TikTok /web /callback, okay, but for that we are going to add it later. The one I want to add is the one that will be called from the client, and then once it is called from the client, it will execute this particular method. So from the client, we are going to call /auth/ TikTok /web, okay, and then I'll call the TikTok or web authorization, okay, and then later it's going to be /web /callback. We'll add the method later, okay. So let me remove this. I'll just comment this out for now, okay. So this one, the second method, will match the paths we have here on the dashboard, okay, and exports default router, okay. Now I will just quickly go to index, and right here at the top I will import, I'll say TikTok routes from /routes /TikTok routes, okay, and we can use them easily here. app.use/ and then I'll add TikTok routes. Okay, so this is what we have right here at this point, okay. We've set up the routes and the controllers. Let me see if I can test this. So let me go to the browser. So http localhost 4000 / then paste this, okay, hit enter, and now you can see it has taken us to the TikTok login page. And if I open, first let me open the terminal. Now on the terminal you can see the URL constructed. You can see the URL constructed, and right here you see tiktok.com/v2/auth authorize. We have the client key, we have the scope, we have the response type, the redirect URI, okay, and then we have the states. You can see it right here, okay. It worked because there is no error, and you can see it here as well in the URL, okay. It contains all the required properties, okay. So I can close this. You can see that this works, and we are going to call this from our client application, okay. So now we have that one taken care of. Let us now add the actual method that will be used to check the authorization itself. So I'll create a new method, export const. I'll call this TikTok redirect, or maybe a better name. For now, I'll just leave it this way. So requests response, okay, and this will promise void, okay, and I can do a try catch, okay. And for this as well, later we are going to add the redirect, but let's start from the top. Now, this particular route, we are not the ones that will call it. TikTok will call this route itself because that is what we specified here, okay. This part, you can see it. So once the user goes to the TikTok login page, then they log in, TikTok will then call this callback URL, okay. Now for us, because we are running locally and we are using ngrok, TikTok will just, or ngrok will just send the request to our local host and then it will redirect the user, okay. So TikTok will be the one to call this endpoint. We are not the ones that will call it. TikTok will call it itself. And while it calls the endpoint, it's going to send some query params. Okay, it's going to send some query params. So request dot query, and we are going to get code. We are going to get states, error. Okay, and I think error description if we want that, but yeah, we can ignore that. So if there's an error, then this property is not going to be null, otherwise it's going to be null. But if everything works fine, we should have the code and the state, okay? So the state is this property that we generated and then we sent, okay? And then it's going to send a code property. And here we can start checking for errors. So if error, for now, I'll just say error any equal to error. And I will return res.redirect, and I will use backticks. I want to redirect to our front end. So this is going to be web app URL, and it's going to be similar to what I have here. Instead of unknown, we can use missing underscore code or any information. But on the front end, we are only going to check for this particular key because we are going to use generic error message, okay? So what is most important is that this TikTok underscore error is present. We don't care about what the value is. We are only interested in the TikTok underscore error. So we show a generic message to the user, okay? And here I can just call encode URI and then pass error, okay? And then the next one, let me duplicate this. So if no code, so if it doesn't return any code, not error, but if it doesn't return any code, I can use this missing underscore code. This doesn't really matter. What is important is this key, okay? So if no code, then redirect to the front end, and then we get this TikTok underscore error. And then also, if no state, and here we can say invalid underscore state, okay? So it will redirect the user. Otherwise, here I can just call res.clear cookie and clear the cookie. What name? This particular one. Just clear it. Okay. Okay, so right here. Now, the next thing we want to do is to exchange this authorization code. So TikTok has an endpoint. Let's see the documentation, if we can find that. Let's see. Okay, so in order for us to exchange the code, we need to call another endpoint so that we can get an access token. And to call that endpoint, we'll need to pass the code. We need to pass probably other properties like client key, client secret. And then in the response, we can get all of this, okay? So let me just show you how to implement that. So after clearing the cookie, down here, I'll say exchange authorization code. Okay, I will use the fetch API. So const token response equal to await fetch API. If you are most comfortable using Axios or any other tool, but I think fetch is very simple. We don't need to install anything. And then I'll add the endpoint, which is https://open.tiktokapis.com/v2/oauth/token. Then we have end with a slash. Okay, so you can pause the video and copy this. Make sure you copy the correct thing. https://open.tiktokapis.com/v2/oauth/token/, and then after that I'll add the curly brackets. We can specify our method. It's going to be a post request. Okay, it's going to be a post, and the next headers, and this is going to be content dash type, and then we specify application slash, you can see it right here, it says application slash swww form URL encoded. Okay, right here, and cache dash control, we set no cache. Okay, so this is the first part. Oh, I think I made a mistake. Let me cut this out. It should be inside the fetch. Okay, then after the headers we need to add the body. So body, and we use new URL search params and client underscore key. This will be process.env dot, let me see, TikTok clients. Oh, okay, and we need to add the client underscore secret. So we'll change this to secrets. So let me go to .env, copy this client secrets. Okay, and then the next one, we need the code. So I'll add this as a string code. We need a property called grant underscore type. So this is what is required, and it is called authorization underscore code. Okay, so this is the grant type, and then redirect underscore URI. This will be equal to the redirect URL we specified here. Okay, so we have this. Okay, so I think I need to close this. Okay, so this is what we need in order to get our token response. Okay, the method is post, we set our headers. Make sure that you add these headers and not application JSON. Okay, then cache control, no cache. Then for the body, new URL search params, client key, client secret, code, grant type, and redirect URL. Okay, so outside that, const, this will be token data. I'll just set this to any, equal to await token response dot JSON. Remember, this is how you get the data from the fetch API. Okay, and we can do a check if no token response dot OK or token data dot error. I can copy one of these redirects. So, and you can give this whatever you want. So, token exchange. Like I said, the value is not important. The token error is important because we are going to show a generic error message. Okay, so if this is false or this exists, okay, so this error is not null, then we redirect back to the client with this token or TikTok error property. Now, after that, the next thing is to retrieve TikTok profile. Okay, so once we're able to get the token data, now we need to get the TikTok profile for the specific user. So const profile response equal to await fetch, and we can get it from https://open.tiktokapis.com/v2/info. Okay, and then we specify, after that we need to specify right here the properties we want to get. So the properties we want to get are, we want to get fields equal to open_id. Now you should note TikTok does not give us access to the user's email. Okay, so we can't get the user's email. So we get a unique open ID, display underscore name, and avatar underscore URL. Okay, TikTok does not give us access to the user's email. Okay, so if don't expect to get the email. So headers, and I'll set authorization, and this will be bearer, and then we add token data dot access token. So once we get this token data, we'll have access to the token. You can see, okay, it's not defined right here. Okay, you can obtain, you can see, you can obtain the access token using the code appended to your redirect URI. You can obtain the access token for the user, which completes the flow for logging in with TikTok. Okay, so if we get to this point, then probably the login was successful. Okay, but we can still do a check. Const profile data any equal to await profile response dot JSON. And let me copy this. Okay, so right here it will be profile response and profile, whatever you want to use. Or here, instead of error, I'll say profile data, yeah, dot code is not equal to okay. So if in this error object we have a code property and it's not equal to okay, then we throw this or we redirect the user. And if everything is successful, then let's get the profile equal to profile data, and what we want from data object is the user object. Okay, remember I said we don't have access to the email. We only get open ID, display name, avatar, URL. Okay, and now we need a way to add it as params. So const callback params equal to new URL search. Okay, so we need to append the TikTok ID, the display name, and the avatar URL to the URL or the redirect URL. Okay, so that we can get them or we can fetch them from the URL as params. So I'll say callback params dot set, and maybe I'll call this TikTok underscore open underscore ID. You can give this whatever name you want, and we'll get it from profile dot open underscore ID. I'll do this 2 more times. I'll call this display underscore name. So this will be display underscore name or null. And this will be avatar underscore URL. And this will be avatar underscore URL or null. Okay. And now we need to set up our redirect. So right here, I'll call return res.redirect. Okay. And add backticks with our web app URL. Now I'll add a params property. You can call it whatever name you want, but I'll call mine exchange. And then I'll encode it. So encode URI. So callback params dot to string. So we are encoding this callback params as a string. So on the client, we are going to check for this property. If it exists, then we'll get access to our TikTok open ID, display name, and display avatar. And for the error part, yeah, I can just set this to unknown. Okay, so at this point, this is what we need in the TikTok redirect. So let me spell this properly. Okay, so this is just all we need. Now I will add it to the route. So let me uncomment. Let me uncomment these parts and just call this here. Okay, so with this now, we have everything we need for our TikTok authentication for web. That is the backend setup. Okay, so we have everything we need right here. Okay, so with this method, TikTok web authorization, we construct the URL and then redirect the URL. If TikTok checks and finds out that all of these are correct, it will take the user, if the user haven't already logged in on the browser. Okay, so if the user hasn't already logged in on the browser, TikTok will take the user to the login page. And once the user logs in, TikTok will then call this redirect itself. That is this part. We are not the ones that will call it. TikTok will call it because that was what we specified as the callback. You can see it right here. So TikTok will call it by itself, and then it will check if it has error. It will redirect. Okay. If code doesn't exist or state doesn't exist, it redirects. But if it does exist, we clear the cookie, and then it makes a request to get the authorization code. Okay, so we make this request, and if there's an error, we redirect. Otherwise, we use that to get access token, and then we get the user profile. And if everything is successful, we set the TikTok open ID, the display name, avatar URL. Note, you can call this whatever you want. My TikTok ID. Whatever you want, you can call it. Okay, I just called my TikTok open ID, display underscore name, avatar underscore URL. And then we pass them as params. Okay, so on the client side, we're going to look for this property and then get all of these params. Okay, so at this point now, we have our backend. I don't want us to spend time to test this. What we'll do next is to quickly work on our client application. That is the front-end application, and we're going to use React. We want to set up our client application. It's going to be a very simple application. And the tooling that we are going to use is Vite. It's a very popular tool. So you can go to vite.dev and can go to the get started. I don't want us to spend time here. I believe probably you might have already used this. So I want to use the React TypeScript template. Okay, and to use that, let me see. You can go to using create Vite with command line options. So click this. Since we're using npm, if you prefer yarn, Bone, PM, Dino, but we are using npm. So it's npm create Vite at latest, then the name of your app, -- space, -- template, and then the name of your template. The template I want to use is React-TS. Okay, so I'm going to do it inside this same folder as well. Okay, and yes, so I'll run the command. So the command is npm, let me see, npm create Vite at latest, and then the name of my project, TikTok login -web, then space -- template, and my template is React-TS. Okay, so this is what I'm using. Okay, and I'll hit enter, and I want to use ESLint, yes, and this will install. While this is installing, we are going to also use Tailwind. We don't really need to go into that deep. And right now you can see it runs on the default port, which is 5173. But if you remember on the server, I said, or I specified that my front end will run on port 3000. Okay, so I need to set the front end to port 3000 right here. So go to vite.config. Okay, so go to vite.config. And then here, set server. And then I'll set the port to whatever port you want to use for your front end. For me is port 3000. Okay, now you can see it runs on port 3000 right here. Okay, and we have this. So let me go to the browser. So localhost 3000. And you can see what we have, the default page. Okay, the next thing I want to do is to install some packages. Okay, so I want to install some packages. I'm going to install Tailwind. So let me go to package.json. You can see, first, let us install React Router DOM. Okay, so we can manage navigation. So npm install React-Router DOM. Okay, and it's already it's installed. And then you can see here we have some other dev dependencies. What I just want to install is Tailwind. So npm install -d Tailwind CSS. So I'm installing it as a dev dependency, and right here it is installed. Okay, so I will then go to my Vite config. So go to Vite config. Make sure you add it in the plugins section. So after React, I'll say Tailwind CSS. Okay, and I can have that imported. So right here. So import Tailwind CSS from @Tailwind. Let me see if I installed the Tailwind. Okay, I missed one plugin. So we need to install another plugin, which is the Tailwind CSS Vite plugin. Okay, so npm install -d @Tailwind CSS /Vite. Okay, and I think that should be it. Okay, so I have this installed now, and Tailwind CSS Vite. Okay, so these are just the configurations we need in the Vite config. And if I go to package.json, do I need anything else here? Yeah, we can use the default. It's fine. Okay, Now, the next thing I want to do is I'll go to my index.html. So I'll change this to TikTok login. So TikTok login. And one thing I want to do is I want to use Font Awesome CDN. So Font Awesome CDN. The reason why I use this is because I don't want to install any third-party library for icons. Okay, so go to this CDN.js. Okay, Font Awesome. Then copy the link here, this second icon, and then come right here under the title, paste this. Okay, so now we have Font Awesome in our project. Okay, and now we can go to our source folder. So we have, we can empty this. I don't need this. And go to app.ts. I can change this as well. Let me remove everything here. So I'll clear everything from here. Okay. Remove all this. Right here. Okay. Now let me check the main. Okay, I think this is fine. Okay. And for this app.ts, or before then, go to your index.css. So remove everything from your index.css and then add the @import. So we import Tailwind CSS. Okay, so just add this to your index.css @import Tailwind CSS. This is React element. Now this is a functional component. Okay. And now what I want to do is to set up the routes, okay, because we need that. And to set up the routes, I will use the browser router from React Router DOM, okay, and I will add the routes. So let me import this, okay, and I'll add the route. Okay, and on the route component, not the routes, but on the route component, we can specify our route. The path is going to be / / and for now we don't have the element, so I will leave it, and maybe I'll come back for the second route. Okay, so what we need to add here is simply a login component or a login page or whatever you want to call it. So I'll quickly, inside the source, I'll create a folder called pages, and inside I'll create login page.tsx. Now for this, I will just add the HTML template because it will just take us unnecessary time to type everything out. You can get the code from the GitHub repo. Okay, so it's very simple. I'll create a functional component here. So login page, and this will return React elements. Okay, and then let me just quickly export this. So export default login page. Okay, and now we need to return the elements. It's very simple. So return. Okay, like I said, I will just paste it here. Let me see if I can format this. Okay, so this is formatted. Oh, yes, this is formatted properly. Okay, like I said, this would have just taken us unnecessary time to type all of these out. So we don't want to spend that time. Okay, so this is just for the error badge. And yeah, so this is just what we have. And what I need to do is just use this in the app.ts. So this is going to be the default part, and I'll say elements equal to, and I'll add the login page. Okay, so I'll add the login page. So go ahead and add the login page, and let's see. And you can see this is how the login page looks. So I just have an icon, then this text. We are going to hide this, and then this is the login button, and then these are just some placeholder texts. Okay, so this is how the login page looks. Login with TikTok. Okay, so we have that one taken care of now. The next thing we want to do is for us to implement the connection to the backend. Okay, so we already have that implemented. I'll do that here. So const backend URL equal to http :/localhost 4000. Okay, and the next thing I want to do is to create the authenticate with TikTok method. Okay, so here, so const authenticates or login with TikTok, whichever one you want to call it. So login with TikTok. Okay, it's just a method that returns void right here, and I'll do a try catch in this block console.log. If there's any error, just log it. Now for this, what we want to do is we want to call the Windows object, and then once we call the Windows object, we call the location.assign, so that we can assign the property or the endpoints with /auth/TikTok/web. So I'll say const window equal to document.default view. Okay, so right here, this gives us access to the Windows object with a document, and or null if none is available. Okay, so I will just check if no window, I'll use an early return. Okay, otherwise I'll call location.assign. And then what do we want to assign? I want to assign the URL, which is backend URL /auth/TikTok/web. Remember I said the one here will be the one called by us, which is this auth TikTok web, so that we can construct the TikTok authorization URL. Okay, so we have it, and this is how we do it. We are not using any endpoint or any tool like Fetch API or Axios. Just use this window location assign. And if I hover on this, what it does is the assign method of the location interface causes the window to load and display the document at the specified URL. Okay, so that is why I decided to use this window.location.assign. And I need to call this method. Okay, so we need to call it on the button. Where is the login with TikTok button? Yes, this particular button right here. And on click, and then I'll pass it here. Okay, and this is just all we need for this. Okay, but note that once we call this auth TikTok web, and then TikTok authenticates, opens the TikTok login page, the user logs in. Now we need a way to get those properties. If I go back to the server, remember these properties, either the TikTok errors or we get the exchange. We need a way to get those properties. Either we get the errors or we get the exchange. So now let me go ahead and try this to see if it's going to work. Okay, so I'll go to the browser right here, reload this page, and let's see what happens. I'll click on login with TikTok, and now you can see it has taken me to TikTok page, and now I will need to log in to TikTok. Okay, so I'll need to log in. Let me see, I'll log in with email. I think I have an email, so I'll go ahead and log in. Okay, so I have this, and then I'll click on login. Let's see what's going to happen. So we'll click on login, and then I'll close this. Now, yes, I think we expect this. Okay, so possibly we are supposed to get an error, or let me see, maybe there's something not right here. Okay, in the client secrets, yeah, maybe one of these. I'm thinking maybe one of these is not. It's the reason why I'm getting this error. But at this point, I will just leave it. I'll go back, click back. Okay, but you can see that the user is able to authenticate. So localhost 3000. If I try to log in again, TikTok will not show the login page. Let me try it. So if I click here, yes, it will not show the login page because TikTok is already logged in on the browser. If I want to see the login page, I'll have to log out from TikTok from the browser. Okay, so at this point, let us just finish everything, and then we'll come back to check why this is not working. Okay, so we have this part where this works. Okay, now we need a way to get the exchange and also check for the errors. So we need a way to check for TikTok error, or we need a way to check for exchange. Okay, so let me add the method here. So first I'll set a type. I'll call this TikTok results. This will be status success. Okay, and TikTok open ID of type string, display name of type string, avatar URL of type string. Okay, or status error, or status idle. Okay, so we have this TikTok result type, and I want to create a function pass TikTok params. Normally I would have just added this to a separate method, or to a separate file, but now I will just do it here. So this will take the search params of type URL search params, and this will return TikTok results. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to check for the exchange or the error, and the error. So const exchange. Remember that in the exchange we are passing the open ID, the display URL or display name, avatar URL. So I'll say search params dot get. So if we have this, we check for this exchange property. Okay, so if exchange exists, okay, so if it's not null, then I want to get the params equal to new URL search params, and I'll pass exchange. And then here you can get your TikTok ID. So these properties equal to params dot get. Now what did I call it on the back end? I think I called it TikTok underscore open underscore ID. You have to use the same names. This will be display name, This will be avatar URL. This will be display underscore name. This will be avatar underscore URL. Okay, and then we can see if TikTok ID and display name and avatar URL exists, then return status success and we need the TikTok ID, display name, avatar URL. Else, just return status error. Okay, so this is for the exchange case. Now let us check for error. I'll call this error, and I called it TikTok underscore error, just to be sure. We can check just to be sure. So if I go to the controllers, yes, TikTok underscore error. Okay, so that is what I passed right here. And or maybe I can just simply do something like this. If search params.get TikTok URL, then return error. Otherwise, I'll return idle. Okay, so this is the method that I'm using to pass the TikTok params. So we check for the exchange. We try to get the ID, display name, URL. If they all exist, the status will be set to success, and then we return the open ID, display name, and avatar URL, just like the way we specified here. Otherwise, we set status to error. And then we check if TikTok error exists, then return error, otherwise return idle. Okay, so now we have this. What I want to do is I'll get the search params using use search params hook. Okay, so we get this and navigate. So const navigate equal to use navigate hook. Okay, and now the next thing is I want to get the exchange results, and I'm going to use memo. Okay, we don't need to use an effect because I don't want unnecessary re-rendering. Okay, so I'll use memo hook. Okay, and the use memo hook will take in the TikTok results right here, and I'll pass the callback by calling pass TikTok, and here I will just pass the search params. Okay, and we need the dependency array. We pass it as search params. Okay, like I said, I don't want to use any use effects because it might cause some unnecessary re-rendering. So I'm using a use memo so that it caches the data and only re-renders if something changes. Okay, and then the next thing is, let me get error message. So if exchange results.status is equal to error. Now this is where I said we will use a generic error message. You can use whatever you want. So TikTok sign in failed. Please try again. Okay, otherwise it's going to be empty. Okay, we are using a generic error message right here. And where do we use this? We use it here. Where is this error part? Okay, so I'll change this, but I need to wrap it in a condition. So if error message, then I want to display this badge. Okay, so if there's an error message, just display the badge. Okay, now we have that taken care of. So we have this the past TikTok params. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is to call a use effect, so that once the user authenticates successfully, then we will get the display name, get the avatar URL, and then we can take the user to the next page. Okay, so I will use a use effect right here, and I'll add a condition: if exchange result.status is not equal to success, then use an early return. Okay, and let me add the dependency list, and inside I'll add the exchange result. Now what I want to do is I want to navigate to another page, and I'll call the navigate method navigate, and I don't have this route already, but I'll just call this authorized, and we need to pass some properties, and we pass the object called state. So in the React Router DOM navigate method, you can pass a state object. Okay, and here I would pass the display name. This would be exchange result dot display name, and I'll pass the avatar URL and exchange result dot avatar URL. Recall that I said TikTok don't give access to email, so we don't have access to email. You have access to some other properties, but not the email. Okay, the reason why I'm adding this states with display name and avatar URL, so that on the next page we should be able to display the information. And then this authorized route, I want to implement it such that any user will only be able to access it once they authenticate successfully. So if they try to access it without authenticating, we'll take them back to the index page. And after state, I will say replace. I'll set this to true. Okay, so at this point, I think these are the things we want. Just one more thing on this div, I'll add on click, and I want to add the method navigate and then /. Okay, so I think it looks as though we have everything we need right here. Yes. Okay, and let me go ahead and create the authorized page. So create a new page. I'll call this authorized page.tsx. Okay, and const authorized page equal to this, and it will return a React element, and here exports default authorized page. For this as well, I'm going to paste the HTML right here. Okay, so I'll paste it right here. Okay, so let me try to format this. Okay, so this is very simple. Before we go through it, let me just add what we need. So const navigate equal to use navigate, and location, we need the location so that we can get the state. Use location. Remember the state that we passed here? We want to be able to get this display name and display URL. And down here, I'll just destructure. This will be location.state, and yeah, let me just create a simple interface. Authorized state, display name string, and avatar URL string. Okay, so the states, I'll cast it as authorized state, and we can get display name, avatar URL. Okay, now let us start using them. So what we just need to do, I think we don't need anything here. We don't need any information here. Here is just showing, okay, you are authorized, and then we're successfully logged in. Welcome to the dashboard. And now on the image, okay, so let's go to the image. We need to specify the avatar URL. So here on the source, I'll say avatar URL. Now for the alt, you can use whatever you want, or I will just use display name, TikTok avatar. Okay, or you can add whatever text you want to display here. Okay, and we have the class name, and then the on error. If there's an error, we just call this fallback. We set the style display to none, and then we remove the hidden class. Okay, and then right here where we have the display name, I will just call display name, and for this part I'll use display name, but it's going to be to lowercase, display name dot to lowercase. Okay, and one last thing on the button right here, I'll call on click so that the user can go back, or the user can log out. So this will be log out, or rather I'll call navigate. So if the user clicks on this button, take them back to the index page. And here I want to set replace to true and state to null. Okay, so I am clearing these state properties, display name and avatar URL. And at this point, I think these are the only things that we need here in this authorized page. Now let's go to our app. So what I'm going to do is, if the user is not authorized to access this authorized page, we'll redirect them back to the login page. Okay, so I'll add another route. This is going to be /authorized, because that is where we are taking the user to. You can see it right here. And then for the element itself, I'll add, or I need to create the protected route, because I need to protect the route. So I'll say const protected route, and here we take property children, and this will be of type children, and they will all be of type React elements. Okay, and then here we return React element. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is I will get location, use location. So we want to use the location to get the state, and yeah, it's fine if I duplicate this. I think it's fine. Okay, And I'll do this, what I did here, just copy this. Okay, so get the display name and the avatar URL. And now I'll do a check. If, or instead of that, okay, so I will say maybe const is authorized equal to, let me just do some checks. So if display name is equal to string, this is just for some guards, and display name dot length is greater than 0, and I'll do the same thing for avatar URL. Okay, so this will return a boolean. And then here, remember that if the user clicks on the logout button, we set the state to null. Okay, so we set the state to null. I think what we can do here, I'm just thinking if we can just get this directly. Let me just say states, and this will be dot states. Okay, and just get this directly. Okay, and now if is authorized is false, then I want to return the user back to the index page by calling the navigate component. This navigate component is from React Router DOM. I'll set to and then add replace property. Okay, so if there is no display name and there is no avatar URL, then take the user back to the index page. Otherwise, return children. So whatever route is passed inside this protected route, we just return it. And how do we use this? It's very simple. Here I'll call in the elements protected routes, and then inside I'll call authorized page. Okay, so if I go back to the browser now, let me try to see if I can access authorized. You can see now the user was redirected back to the index page. So let me try this again. Authorized. The user is redirected back to the login page with login with TikTok because state is null. Where is it? Right here. State doesn't have display name and avatar URL. Let us now test out what we've built so far. So I'm on the page. I'll click on this login with TikTok. And right here, I still get this error that says non-sandbox target. I think I know why. Let me go back to the page. So go back to your dashboard, your sandbox dashboard. You need to specify the target users, the test users. You need to specify them right here. Okay. So go ahead and add the TikTok user that you want to test with. Okay. So it must be a real TikTok account. Okay. So I'll click add accounts, continue. And here it's going to request for an account. I'll go ahead and add it. Okay. So now I've logged in and I need to authorize it or verify. I'll click continue and I'll wait for this. It will navigate back to the dashboard. And now you can see I have logged in with this user. So now when I click on the login button, I need to test with this particular user. Okay, so go ahead and add your own user. You can add as many users as you want. Okay, so I've added this user now. I'll go back to the login page. Okay, so I'll click on login with TikTok and it should show me. And right here, you can see I have this error. Okay, remember that we added a generic error And if I check the URL, you can see TikTok underscore error is an unknown error type, but we are displaying a generic error. And let me check why. So I'll go to controller. Let me check why that is happening. Oh, this is the issue. This is where I have the issue right here. So it's supposed to be slash v2/user/info. In fact, let me cut this one out and then just paste it here. Okay, so open.tiktokapis.com/v2/user/info/ question mark symbols with the fields. Okay, so go ahead and make this change. Okay, so let's go ahead and try it again. So if I reload, this is still displayed. I'll click on login and let's see. Now you can see I'm authorized. Now the reason why it didn't show me the TikTok login page was because I logged in when I added this user. Okay, so when I added this user, I logged in on the browser. So TikTok didn't show me the login page. But now you can see you are authorized, the image of the user, the display name, okay, and active. If I click here, it should take me back to the index page. I can go back and try to authorize, and you can see the user is taken back to the login page. So with this now, our login with TikTok on web works. I'll try it again. So once you are logged in already on the browser, TikTok doesn't show you the login page. It will just authenticate and then redirect you. Okay. Now, if you notice that there is nowhere in our code where we actually called this, either on the front end or on the back end. We only called the endpoints, which is this one, this particular one from our web application. TikTok was the one after authenticating called this endpoint, okay? Because we specified it right here. Now, normally in a real application, you would deploy your backend and then change this parts of the URL to your backend, okay? But because we don't want to deploy, we are using ngrok, and TikTok requires HTTPS, okay? So you can go ahead and add all this. Now, for what we have done, the sandbox is sufficient. Now, if you decide you want to go the production route, now you need to add actual information, okay? Your actual service URL, because TikTok will request you to validate that URL, okay, for your application. So your terms of service URL, privacy URL. If you add web, then you add all the necessary information. Then you add some description, and then you upload some videos, you submit for review. But for the sandbox, we don't need to do all that because it's we are testing. And usually, before you go the production route, make sure that everything works with sandbox, and then you use the sandbox credentials to create your videos. Okay, you use the sandbox credentials to create your videos, and then you submit. Okay, so at this point now, we are now able to log into TikTok using the TikTok APIs and our web application. On a normal web application, you will do probably multiple things with the information. Okay, so right here, what we just did was, after getting the display name and avatar URL, we just navigated to the authorized page to display it. In a normal application, you might want to save this information in the database, or if you are using Firebase, you might want to create some custom auth tokens. But for us, we didn't do that. I just wanted to show you how you can set up your authentication on the web using TikTok. One thing to point out, like I said, if you select Android and iOS, okay, Android, you will need to set your app package name. You will need to set your Google Play App Store, okay? You can see their required information, okay, assuming you already have your application on the app stores. And then for Android, you will need to add your app signatures. Okay, it's important. And then you add your SHA-256 certificate fingerprint. Here is the MD5, here is the SHA-256. For iOS, you add your App Store URL and your bundle ID. Okay, and after that, you will need to specify your callback URLs. Like I pointed out earlier, make sure that you are using the same callback URL, at least for Android, iOS, and web, because I tried it out. Like I explained earlier, I implemented for Android and iOS. They both worked. I used the same callback URI. When I implemented for web, I used a different callback URI. It worked for web, but Android and iOS did not work. I tried after so many hours, then I figured out that, oh, they were all supposed to use the same callback URI. So it's something that you need to remember. Okay? So for now, I will just uncheck this too. Okay? So we only implemented for web applications.